get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Hey, Thrive Loud listeners, Lou Diamond here. Before we get to our episode of Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive, where we pull one of those amazing interviews from that podcast and play it here on Thrive Loud, a couple of admin notes. One, go download the Good Pods app and start listening to our Thrive Loud episodes there and connect with other friends and learn about other great podcast episodes. It's an amazing app. It's a great way to connect. It basically is like Twitter and podcasting got together and had a baby. But what's even better is that you can communicate directly with the host and the guest on that particular episode. So great interaction, great way to communicate and see what other people are listening to, which is always the problem with all the podcast episodes that are out there. Second point, stay tuned and keep following Lou Diamond or Thrive Loud anywhere in social media, and you'll hear more about Thrive Loud Live. We're going to do some live interviews on both Facebook and YouTube, where you're going to have a chance to connect directly to the guests in that live session, and we'll obviously record it and play it on YouTube and Facebook, so you can catch it if you missed it. But a great chance to connect with some of the Thrive Loud catch-up episodes of some of the guests we've had on in the past. Some pretty fun names that are coming up and are scheduled. We haven't nailed down the exact set recording date yet, but stay tuned and follow Thrive Loud and you'll hear more about Thrive Loud Live. And lastly, go back and listen to some of the recent episodes. Ones of note, Jonathan Silver from Affinity, an incredible conversation, really great leader, great product. Trisha Brook, the big talk, love talking with her. Great message, really great speaker too. Kelly Earnhardt Miller, loved talking about her and her new book, Drive. Ora Nadrich, which was pulled from, just like this episode, from Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive, Live True, loved that talk. And Mitch Levy, Cred Dust. There's so many great episodes. If you haven't caught up with them, go back and listen. But right now, you have a chance to listen to my conversation with Gary Dickson on Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive, his new book, Spy with Scruples, here on Thrive Loud.
Welcome to Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive, a podcast show that provides you exclusive access to top writers around the globe and how they are thriving through their writing, their passions, and their lives. Here's your host, Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive, connecting you to amazing authors that are thriving through their work and in their lives each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today, we have an inveterate traveler and a Francophile sans merci. Educated in Switzerland in history, literature, and the classics, he has written two very well-regarded novels: An Improbable Pairing, a historical romance that chronicles the enduring themes of a young man's coming of age and the rebellious love of the mismatched, and A Spy with Scruples, which plunges readers into the complicated political world of Cold War Europe, from neutral Switzerland to the aristocratic salons of Paris to bombed-out Berlin. Coming to us from Los Angeles, California, but he's here with us today. Listeners, please welcome Gary Dickson. Gary, how are you today?
I'm very well, Lou. I hope you are.
I am spectacular, and I love connecting with authors with range, because that's what it seems that you have, Gary. The topics that you write about seem to have some theme in there, but they definitely have a spread on it. I kind of want to go a little bit, rewind a little bit, and talk about how you got into writing so much, and has this been a passion of yours from a very young age?
It's been a desire. The way I got into it is I retired. I moved to Los Angeles with my wife, and I speak French. I went to school in France and in Switzerland, and I started going to the Alliance Française here in Los Angeles, and I was taking advanced literature courses, and the professor, who's French, she said, have you ever tried writing anything? And I said, no. She said, you ought to take it up. You ought to look into it. So I went out to UCLA, the Writers Extension, into a short story course. And of course, I was surrounded by people that were half my age or less. And they just loved these stories that I would write. And so the teacher said, you really need to write a novel. And so they put me with a mentor. And I took one of the short stories and I enlarged it. And I amazed myself because I could put 80,000 words, one right after another, and come up with a novel.
Gary, I want to understand a little bit more between the lines and trying to understand the process.
Okay.
There's a creative side to you, obviously, and obviously there must be something from where you grew up in the areas that you're in, based on what your novels are about, that must have sparked it. Talk about your creative process. Do these ideas just come to you, or was there something maybe somewhere seeped in the essence of truth?
As I like to say, or at least I've coined, because a lot of people who've read the first book, which is a romance, and actually the second book, the one, A Spy with Scruples, is actually a sequel to the first book, although it's of a slightly different genre. But I have had these, I guess some of these ideas are partially some of my experience, and I always like to say that there's a little truth in every story, even when it's disguised as fiction. So not everything is true or about me, but there's a lot of things that I have had an experience with that influenced the writing. And so far as the creative side, I was in the printing business, in a family printing business. And we did very, very high-end marketing materials for most of the major luxury brands like hospitality, cruise lines, Giorgio Armani, all the fashion people, the perfume people. And so you're thrown with a lot of creative people, graphic designers, copywriters, etc. So I was always had that I guess I admired those people.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand that perhaps I could do this. And so all I needed was somebody to say give me a little encouragement, and I was off. And so I don't have any problems at this point coming up with ideas. It's just the time to work them out on paper.
Gary, I've got a good question here that I know will be interesting. When you write something and you come up with it and it's creative, it's coming from your, between your two ears and thoughts and experiences. And then the process of putting a book together is quite a interesting experience. I've spoken to many other authors. When you hand it off to the editors, obviously a lot of things can get chopped, mismatched, or literally, I want to say, adjusted to what you've come up with. And sometimes that can feel personal. I want to compare two situations. One, the first time you had your book edited, that first experience, and then the second time around. Was there a difference or a feeling that you knew that was part of the process, what had to happen, or was it kind of like, hey, you're messing with my words?
I'm familiar with the inclination, but I've always been of a curious sort. And I've always sought out help and assistance and an expert opinion. And so I did not look at my editors as adversaries. I looked at them more as colleagues or collaboration agents than anything else. But I must say that my books were not edited to the point where I felt like they were from a creative viewpoint. There were some areas where I was a novice and an engineer, and so they would tell me that perhaps I was changing my point of view. And so it was a fairly simple rewrite to change the point of view. And the second book had a few more things in it than the first book, but I wasn't offended at all. I had someone took the picture of my second book, the one that I'm just going to publish here in March. And they put it on their website, and a fellow looked at it and said, "Oh, I love the cover. I love the title." And I said, "Well, that's a title I came up with." He said, "It's very rare for publishers to keep your title."
Right.
I said, "Well, I've been lucky because they've kept all of my titles that I've written." So I spend a lot of time. Words are very important to me. I'm a great believer in the mot juste. And so, I speak several languages, French, Italian, Latin, the next time Julius Caesar comes to town.
Next time you'll be able to have a conversation with them. I was just about to go there.
Right. So, yeah, I'm kind of steeped in that. So I'm not offended, though, by people offering suggestions to me at all.
Gary, let's talk about the writing process for you. Are you very business oriented in the sense that maybe you have a set schedule that you set to, or do you write when the ideas come to you?
Well, I have a theory. I'm pretty familiar with how people go about writing, and I've studied that aspect of it. But I try to stay away from scheduling because I think it puts too much pressure on the creative process. I walk a lot, and if I don't have it worked out in my mind what's going to happen in the story, I don't ever sit down in front of the computer. I already know what's going to happen in the next episode or how the plot's going to evolve to a certain point before I ever sit down. And a lot of the ideas and a lot of those ruminations that I go through are actually resolved during my morning walks.
You've front run one of the better questions on the show, Gary, and I appreciate that, which is awesome. Which is I love asking guests when they have trouble thriving, who or what practice they seek to get back on the thriving track. So obviously, walking is what you do.
Well, I think the walking is somehow connected with the brain.
Well, a lot of people who do something, whether it's to work out or moving, is a big thing. And I had this conversation once with another author, Gary, and we hit along the lines, that to move comes from, you're a Latin fan, the root is emote, which is, emotion. So we're changing our emotional state when we move from one thing to another. So a lot of times I agree with you. I think blood flow or change of venue triggers that state and maybe clicks into something in the creative process. And more, I think that's the case. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, our entire systems are based on chemistry and electricity. And the more you move, the more you're hydrated, all of those kind of, I didn't realize that, but, it was a very gifted author, P.G. Wodehouse, who wrote a lot of very funny books, English books on England. And I guess he was most famous for Bertie Wooster. But he walked 6 miles every day to the post office and back. He lived in a rural part of France, and then in England. He also lived in Long Island, but he practiced walking, and I remembered that from some time ago. And so I was walking before I was writing, but still I found that on my morning walks, I could get up with a problem, something I wasn't sure about, and I could, most of the time I could resolve it by the time I got back from that walk.
Gary, the comparison here between the two was actually what is fascinating me, to your point that even though it's a sequel, writing about romance has one angle, writing a spy book is another, and the complicated world that you bring out to the readers. I guess, do you feel that that both experiences are similar in that you have to dive into that particular avenue? Did you enjoy writing one more than the other, though?
Well, I like to think of myself as a romantic, but I have a side of me that I would like to think is somewhat of a realist. The romance was very, very easy to write. The spy, the intricacy of it particularly because it's not a spy book. I'm not one in either the romance or in the or in the spy book. I'm kind of like I heard your interview with Felipe Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't do violence, and I don't do graphic sex, and I don't do, 4-letter words. And I'm kind of in that camp. I like the idea of revealing nothing but suggesting everything. I think I like for the reader to use their imagination to take it beyond where I have. So, that's kind of the take. I don't have a preference. I'm writing a sequel now to the sequel, where the romance, spy, mystery type genre is continued. And it will take place in Palm Beach and Paris and Colombia.
I love hearing this. I love that there's a third book and a trilogy on its way. And I have a question here, which is interesting. You've lived in great places and have experiences all around the world. What brought you to retire to Los Angeles?
The weather.
Simple as that.
Well, if I had my druthers, as they say, we would have gone to Paris and spent, at least half the year in Paris, because it's my favorite place. And I've been over 100 times, and lived there and whatever. And, but my wife, she loves Paris, but she likes the Paris of the shopping and the eating, the gourmet aspects and the lovely hotels and all of that. But she likes the conveniences and everything of the United States, and she doesn't speak French.
Well, there you go.
So, I've explained to her that most French people, speak English if their arms are twisted.
Well, I think that's great. I think this is awesome. An Improbable Pairing, A Spy with Scruples. Both will put links on there, specifically A Spy with Scruples, because it's the newer one, and we look forward to hearing.
They're both great reads for. My books are entertainment. I don't have any messaging in them. There's no great message to do anything except enjoy yourself. So, if you're at the beach, you're on a plane or on a train, or you're the passenger in a car. And the first book, actually, An Improbable Pairing, the romance, has an audiobook as well. So.
I like it. Gary Dickson, truly a pleasure to have you on the program here. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of romance and spy books. So you've got me hooked already.
Okay, good. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us. This is Lou Diamond reminding you to keep thriving onward and upward, and keep on listening to Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive.
Thank you for listening to Authors That Thrive, brought to you by Bedside Reading. To learn more about today's guest, head on over to bedsidereading.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or follow us everywhere on social media at Bedside Reading.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.